It really is a great pleasure to be here. Slightly unusual pleasure, actually. It's quite an uncommon event for me to do a poetry reading. In fact, I probably wouldn't describe myself as a poet, but perhaps more as a writer hyphen artist. And the hyphen is important, holding two terms in proximity whilst also keeping them apart. So, somewhere between writer and an artist, a practice located somewhere between the textual and the visual, between what can be said and spoken and what needs to be shown. So most of the extracts that I want to present this evening operate in this very gap. Each explores an interest in the practice itself, attending in different ways to forms of attention, to the act of writing and also the act of reading. Each gestures towards the non-linearity of writing and of reading, towards the fragment, towards repetition, and the potential of text as an open material capable of being endlessly reworked or rewoven. So I want to begin by colliding with two different works that I think explore similar concerns. One is a video work called Glimpsed Liquid Writing, and I'm going to try and collide it with an extract from a text that I wrote for a publication called Beginnings, which is an artist bookwork by artists Ruben Henry and Karen Kilberg, which is available to have a glance at on the table back there. And throughout the reading, I will be weaving extracts from that publication into the presentation itself. This was not the beginning, for that happened elsewhere in other words and times that have since been deleted or assimilated into other texts. The beginning of a text is rarely the beginning. The beginning is often arrived at and not departed from. One beginning is absorbed or displaced by another in writing's waves of endless starting over. Writing is a duplicitous art. Its sentences work to smooth words towards organised flows and sequential rhythms that once written appear as though they have always been as such. Yet, the process of writing is often circuitous or discontinuous, not linear. The beginning of a text is rarely located in the first word, much as the ending is unlikely to be the last. The time that it takes to write the words is condensed into the space that they occupy. Once ordered into line, the process of writing pulls liquid thinking towards the brink of thought, where it is coaxed further still towards the shape of letters congealing across the page. In becoming concrete, the process of thinking loses some of its flow or fluidity, for there is always something surplus that fails to be translated, that resists materialization into definitive form. The wrestle of how the words got there will soon be forgotten. So I'm interested in the wrestle of how the words got there. The unfolding decision-making, the navigation of competing forces, the activity of working with or through obstacles or of figuring something out within practice. Re is a collaboration between myself and artist-writer Rachel Lois Clapham that takes its name from the event of regarding, concerning or being in reference to the endeavour of practice, specifically writing. It also refers to repetition, the prefix re indicating an action repeated again or again and again, a backward turn or return to a previous condition. Re also carries with it the idea of going back to an original, but also a sense of undoing. Re is a body of work that exists as a series of performance lectures and page works. I want to share an extract from a score that was published as part of On Not Knowing How Artists Think, alongside a kind of a creative prose essay that I'd also written entitled Tactics for Not Knowing, Preparing for the Unexpected. There is a definite attempt to get at something. The thing is definitely what we are trying to get at. It is that point there, only that thing might change. We are pointing to this space here, and how this relates to there. What is being said by how it is being pointed, these surpluses which keep coming off the page, that, and then this, running alongside. This is a space which is generative, and I don't quite know what that is, but if I have a hope for it, it is that something not known or not previously known is somehow produced. Ultimately, it is a question of form and of an endeavour. To build in spaces that are more speculative, you have to build in spaces that are more speculative. Something is being diagrammed towards, a gesture is drawn in advance of knowing what it enables. The active spaces of the work are the places where I'm not quite sure what is happening. It is ultimately speculative, which isn't to say not definite. There is expectancy, but only an idea of the shape. The finger presses on and as. It could be in relation to. So as a kind of a collaborative project, Ree also asked a series of questions, or rather Rachel, Lois and myself asked a series of questions. What does it mean to prepare for the unexpected, being open to the possibility of letting something in? There is a repeating structure, but how do you have change within that? How do you repeat without repeating? So the next extract I want to read is from Manual, a publication produced in collaboration with performance artist Victoria Gray. And again, there's some copies at the back there if you'd like to have a look later. Repeating, not repeating. Practicing circuits builds endurance. Practice circuitously, then never a straight course. Practice loops and repetitions, replays, reversals, feedback and about turns. However, the body must stay focused to avoid slipping into routine. Pay attention to every loop and return as if encountered as the first. Repetition never repeats unchanging. The same form can carry different force, the same cause, transformed effects. Yet the promise of difference, indeed of change, is not always so easy to recognise. Repetition can both dull and sharpen the attention. It can groove lines of habit, where the score becomes over-familiar, each loop approached as was, as will be. Yet with practice, repetition might score deeper, where every loop awakens greater understanding, in turn revealing something new. Repeating acts in a vertical key, generating vertiginous difference within what at first glance might appear to be nothing but the same. Vigilance. Grow hypersensitive to the smallest of details. Take the light down low, lower, lower still. Removed from the usual distractions of the diurnal world, the eyes become sensitized to the play of shadows as darkness moves. Notice the different gradients of density, intensity. Avoid assigning names, for the operation of language is a nominal regime that favours the solidity of things and is quick to override the wordless act of sensing. Both thought and gaze must remain somewhat passive to perceive the micro-movements of existence, the vibrations of motion at the verge of action, trembling. Like the stalker or the poacher, practice stillness. Know how the smallest start can scatter one's focus. Remain patient, keep alert, be on the qui vive, on guard, stay watchful. So in some of the recent work that I've been exploring, I've been very interested in the difference between what might be described as Sisyphean repetition, the absurd or even futile rhythm of a Phaland repeat beat, and Penelopean repetition, a willful or resistant doing and then undoing, drawing reference from Penelope's weave and unweave from Homer's Odyssey. And I took these two models, Sisyphean and Penelopean repetition, as the basis for a text called Infinite, which was commissioned by Lemon Mallon Press, as part of a series called Lemonade, Everything Was So Infinite. Lemonade, Everything Was So Infinite is Helen Sixou's translation of Franz Kafka's, or one of Franz Kafka's last sentences. And my publication is called Infinite, and can be read in both directions. And what I want to do now is to try and share an extract. The spoken element corresponds to a left to right reading, and the visual that I want to show tries to correspond to a right to left reading. It's a bit of an experiment. It's the first time I've tried to kind of take it off the page, if you like. So there are thousands of books in the British Library whose title refers to the act of searching. There are at least as many books about the event of loss. Whilst some searches are conclusive, at other times the relation between searching and losing could be conceived in Sisyphean terms, akin to a rock rolled to the top of the hill only to roll back down again, an endless cycle of finding something only for it to then become lost, searching and then losing, searching and then losing, searching and losing ad infinitum. So there are thousands of books in the British Library whose title does indeed refer to the act of searching. The search for oneself, the search for ourselves, the search for selfhood, self-discovery, self-fulfillment, a powerful self-fulfilling prophecy, the search for salvation, the search for wonder, for faith, belief, ritual, occult, the old magic, the magic formula, and front shop magic. The search for the elusive, for the unknown, for uncertainty, ambiguity, and mystery. The search for the counterintuitive, the unspeakable and immeasurable. The search for non-such, non-sense, anti-sense, the ineffable, impossible, unusual, and the unstated. The search for the beyond, for the far side, for dark matter in the universe, for weighty matters, hidden dimensions, for strange phenomena, the supernatural, the paranormal, or the high flyers, the creative sparks, the fountain of youth, the Midas touch, the big bubble, the big thing, the next big game, the next playing field, the principle of universality. The search for the flavour and fragrance of the month. The search for a good religion. The search for the just and right, the right concept, the right partner, Mr. Right, the right in-store music, the right mortising technique. The search for optimal productivity and optimal inflation rate, the elusive optimum, optimal ignorance, and the optimal optimization phase orderings. The search for the optimal scum-sucking bottom feeder. The search for best practice in risk assessment. Best practice, better practices, best of best practices, the best and the brightest, the best score, the best constraint, the best strain of bees, a better mousetrap, a better snake trap, better job satisfaction. The search for a better world, better skies, cleaner skies, purer waters, a greener apple, greener pastures, pastures new. The search for new horizons, a new start, new rules, new masculinity, a new generation of mariners. The search for new age spirituality, a new cosmic blueprint for new meaning at work. The meaning of things, life's meaning, ultimate meaning, the ultimate thrill, the big bang, the sublime, and the ivory-billed woodpecker. The miraculous, the picturesque, the golden fleece, the sacred and the feminine, spirit and art, the Rosetta Stone, and the ultimate building blocks. The search for that rare commodity, relaxation, harmonisation, transformation, European cooperation and end to animal exploitation, theories of mathematical education, better coordination, new ideological orientation, self-affirmation, self-pacification, honour in defence of reputation, the frontier of indirect expropriation, conversation, conservation, conservatism, a morally acceptable nationalism, revolutionary multiculturalism, the origins of feline hyperthyroidism, space-time structuralism, perverse polymorphisms, inadvertent plagiarism, heroism, optimism and happiness, wholeness, cosmic consciousness, human uniqueness, biological weirdness and bored effectiveness, the search for business-like approach, for shareholder value, competitive advantage, a profitable mix, a quick fix, all-round gains, the win-win, cheap money, easy money, maximum profits, maximum stress, global problems, DIY disasters, failed partnerships. So the search for alternative perspectives, for ultimate protection, appropriate contraception, controlled flexibility, quality colonoscopy, and inward light. The search for competitive electricity suppliers, clues to a healthier old age, exciting home cooking, ambidextrous professors, respect selling crack. Horses for courses, beauty and music, politics in poetry, just-in-time writing, a lingua franca in robotics. Operational trophospecies in a subtropical aquatic system. Symbiosis, tuberculosis, oral psoriasis, the source of crisis, the physical basis of life itself. The Grail, the Holy Grail of antifungal therapy, the oily Grail. The American Dream, Nirvana, a utopia of the present, a settlement in the west of Ireland, a suitable place in which to spend the holidays. Everyday happiness, the good life, a simple life, a better way, an ideal world, the ideal system, the ideal nose, the ideal parent, the moral high ground. A way without an atlas, ways out of sticky spots, the search for an obvious and yet radical idea. Plan B. Plan C, the big O, Generation Y, and the ROI of the CPOE, HRM and the IRS, the CEO and the value of NVQs. Pigeonholes, holy places, heaven on earth, Eden, and the new El Dorado. The search for the Emerald City, for green clarity, for good green fun, the green tiger, the ivory gull, the red ape, the pink frog, the golden mean, the 7 golden gussets. The search for 2 characters, 2-phase flow, 2 taxonomies and a mapping between them, the third man, the third way, the 4th maxim, the 4th chord, the 4 musketeers, the rhymer and the other 5 undimers. The search for knowledge and truth, wealth and power, health and wholeness, solace and mercy, pleasure and amusement, pleasure and abstinence, for whiskey, wine and better weather, for a will and a way, for continuities and discontinuities across time. The search for reactionary radicals and front porch anarchists, right and left, then and now, myths and heroes, ancient remains and modern superstitions, gravestones, old and curious. The search for the picturesque, the romantic, fabulous and true, for medicine, motherhood and madness, significant, statistical and otherwise. Love, money, revenge, matter, experience, the real and the right, the reality about death, real ale, the real deal, Einstein's genius, Sir John Franklin's expeditions, Friedrich Schiller's skull, Schubert's doppelganger, Schrödinger's cat, Schopenhauer's cat, the cat's pyjamas. The search for life's great certainty, the good night's sleep, the perfect brew, the perfect pizza, the perfect search, the perfect stranger, the virtually perfect part supplier, perfect brown rot fungicide, the perfect mega widget, the perfect gate, the perfect shape, good form, a positive fit, the total package, the killer app, the killer perk, the silver lining, the missing link, the missing eyelash, that still missing link, the lost Assyrian Empire, lost gardens, lost time, time lost, lost purpose, lost sense, lost sensibilities, the lost god of supermarkets, the lost world to come, a promised land. Eastern promise, a compromise, homogeneity, accountability, functionality, rationality, normality and capacity, the search for clarity about parity, impact, scale and sustainability, authenticity on and off the beaten track, virginity, infidelity, penile rigidity, enhanced concrete durability, digital quality electricity, novel high energy density materials, sanity, tranquility, complementarity, causality, an absolute majority, rural sustainability, equity, amity, radical similarity, urban livability, a creative personality, spiritual identity, sources of humanity, a mechanism to explain electrosensitivity, anonymity, miscibility, serendipity and infinity, and the search for ellipticity. There are thousands of books in the British Library whose title refers to loss. There are at least as many books referring to the act of searching. Whilst some losses are irredeemably catastrophic, at other times the relation between losing and searching could be conceived in Penelopean terms, akin to the nightly unravelling of a weave to avoid closure or completion, such that by morning the task can begin afresh, an endless cycle of losing something so the search can begin again once more. Losing and searching, losing and searching, losing and searching ad infinitum. So I want to close with a text called Close Reading, which really kind of addresses the idea of reading, if you like. Like writing and reading perhaps, the time that it takes to write a book folds into the time that it takes to read it. A book is a conduit through which one person's thoughts flow into someone else's. At times it becomes impossible to discern the process of reading another's thoughts from thinking one's own. Virtual spaces are created through the collaboration of a writer and a reader. They are the product of these two forces working as one. Less perceptible spaces open in the turning of the page. Books unfold spaces non-reducible to their external dimensions. Their exterior space is never equivalent to the space they occupy on the shelf. Words are sonorous as much as signifying units. The soundness of a text tested by tongue and lips as much as by the mind. Certain language must be rolled in the mouth before it can be fully digested. Engagement with a text is often fractured or discontinuous, performed through a series of ellipses, loops and returns. Certain sections are lingered over whilst others are skimmed past. Different methods of reading generate different registers of effect. There is scope for testing experimental practices. With practice, language can be made to stretch or pucker, ruche or fray. With experience, it can be pulled thin and sheer as delicate gauze, or gathered up into thick and impenetrable creases. Under scrutiny, text can be pressured into its component parts of ink and page. The legibility of a word rendered nonsensical the closer it is attended to, as writing slips towards movement and materiality, as meaning dissipates into pleats and folds. Close reading, explication de text, drawing on the Latin origins of the word explicare, to fold out, to set forth. Yet, insight is not gleaned by simply getting nearer to a text, for this will only amplify its detail, bringing it closer into range. Paying close attention to language does not always clarify any single, stable meaning, for the more something becomes scrutinized, the less it becomes known. The act of looking harder, more forcefully, can cause a text to retreat or withdraw, for it might not respond well to such advances. So being open to the true force of a text requires a different approach. The reader must learn to tarry, take her time. The significance of a text can take years to unravel. The impact of another can be felt in a lightning flash. Reading is not bound by the chronology of the text's unfolding. Attention can be activated mid-sentence or halfway down a page. A single sentence might open in one book and close in another. Conclusions do not always need to be drawn. Resolution is an illusion, a moment of pause rather than of completion. Nothing is ever truly finished. For every process always becomes another, becomes another, becomes another, becomes every ending is also a beginning. This is not the end, but rather another place from which to start. Thank you.